just with a minimum amount of wool and not too much time, we can have a pair knitted up for us or as a gift to keep our hands warm or for decoration. I love to knit gloves and mittens, and I wear fingerless mittens a great deal of the time. Historians place the date of the beginning of knitting at AD 200, but legend claims that the seamless garment of Christ was knitted and so could not be cut or divided, and lots were cast for it. Legend, again, provokes a claim to Penelope's web, which she wrought by day and unravelled so quickly by night, saying it was knitted. We can have coloured knitting, stranded knitting, mittens that are made with lace, and it's so easy to come across older books with older patterns that can give us inspiration and a basis from which to start to make our own designs. We can use a double knitting, as in this mitten, 1 ply, 2 ply. This mitten here is made using Jamieson and Smith's 2 ply jumper weight. But you could have a heavier Norwegian yarn if you wanted a thicker glove. And of course you can add kid silk. There's so many ideas for mittens and gloves. My sampler box, it's rather full now, is an important part of my knitting process. And I do make swatches or samples for most everything. I love designing these lace mittens, and I also like to design the colour knitting, which I have here, one that is a traditional Norwegian design. It's very helpful to have Mary Thomas's knitting book. She has an excellent chapter on gloves and mittens. Lithuanian gloves, how to make the thumb, sports mitts, it's all here. There is quite a lot of skill required to make gloves. This is a pair of liturgical gloves, believed to be Spanish and dating from the 16th century. The Romans had no word for glove. Gloves must have originated in the early Middle Ages, it's thought. In medieval Latin they were called either manica, meaning wristlet or cuff, or by new words based on a Germanic root, such as vanto or guantus, or a word based on Greek, karotheka, hand case. In practice, karotheka meant a bishop's liturgical glove. It is possible that some bishops began to wear gloves as insignia of rank or dignity as early as the 7th century. And here are some gloves from Riga, and on the right, my pattern inspired by it, partly using Shetland colour knitting. Now, when I began with a pair of gloves. I took the most challenging aspect of glove knitting first. The thumb is a challenge and needs quite a lot of practice. There are a couple of methods of knitting thumbs, and also the fingers can be quite tricky, but it's all worth it. So here's my sample box. Some people call these swatches, and ideally you knit up a swatch before you begin a project to work out what your gauge is with your needle size, which won't necessarily be the same as the pattern, and so you have to possibly change your needle size in order to get the right gauge indicated in the pattern. This is Jamieson and Smith lace weight and Rowan kid silk haze with 3mm needles. It helps to label your samples. And this one here is quite complicated because I changed the needle size as I went along so that I could compare in one swatch what the tensions would be. It's fun to change the needle size. The knitting becomes tighter and therefore the article becomes smaller, and I did knit a pair of mittens which did just that. For the wrist, I reduced the needle size and then increased it again as I worked to the hand. So we're going to tuck those back into the box. You can see I sometimes use embroidery or beadwork, even on my swatches, to see what they will be like ultimately. Going back to old patterns, it's also useful to have blockers, wooden blockers, once you've finished the article, to stretch it. Now you can see my beginner attempts at gloves. The blue ones were the first gloves I made, and then I went on to a lighter yarn for the grey, fingerless mittens, or fingerless gloves. It's good to have a deep rib on a glove so that it covers your wrist. And designing on graph paper, that's the design for my wallflower mittens. There they are on the left. And on the inside where your palm is, the design will be different. You can put quite a lot of different ideas into one glove or mitten. I love wearing these little lace ones. They're just 1-ply lace weight yarn. It's very light. So mittens, fingerless gloves, in different weights to keep our hands warm and to protect